Okay, so my take on that is potentially controversial. Music saved my life. The biggest problems in Zambia are actually at the top. Find the middle ground or switch all the way. There's living in purpose, and then there's making a living.
It's been, I think 6. It's been about like 5-6 years since we met in person. Thank you for coming.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you for coming, bro. To start this off, you are one of the key voices in our industry that speaks with substance around issues affecting artists and sometimes even just us as Zambians in general. So we salute you for that. I think I've personally known you for a long time, and I think your reach and your influence has grown so much that you've come a long way, and we salute you for that. So yeah,
Thank you.
Your flowers are here. We've given them. Thank you. Okay, cool. So firstly, on a bit of a harmonious outlook, on your podcast, we saw that you were interviewing or had a chat with Paul Cruz, and you specifically spoke in Bemba the whole way. And we found that very intriguing, that something like that hasn't been done, at least on the modern digital space. I mean, obviously ZNBC and like they've done that before, but like on this new wave of media, it hasn't been done, at least on a scale like that before. So like, could you like guide us through that whole process? Was the Bemba intentional? And how was the conversation with Paul Cruz from your perspective?
Okay, so the idea came from, I had a conversation with a friend of mine because we are content creators and we're always like bouncing ideas off each other. So this one day I was like, why don't we have like content in Bemba? Because if you look at the music in Zambia that actually gets proper reception, like if you're actually trying to communicate to Zambians, they resonate with the Nyanja, the Bemba. So I was like, why not cater like a podcast specifically for that kind of with that kind of direction? And then it was a thought for a while till eventually I was like, you know what, let me actually do this. So this was a very random thing. So I was like, who's the easiest person to get today? I was like, Paul lives nearby. Let me check if Paul is available. So I called Paul. Paul was like, yeah, cool, you can show up. So I drove to his place. We shot. It was like a one-shot thing. It actually just made sense. It was a great experience. We resonated on a lot of issues, and I feel like we had a very good chemistry in terms of like how we both could like conversate both in English and Bemba, because I think that's not a very common thing in Lusaka. Like there are issues where someone knows Nyanja and English, Bemba and English. But that was like a very easy thing to do for us.
Okay. No, cool. Like we saw it, and Uncle Chilu specifically loved it, and he found it very intriguing. Like something like that hasn't been done in the digital space, and like it was really cool. So now, quite recently, you tweeted you tweeted about the advice that you would give to Mampi, and the post received a lot of buzz, especially that you outlined like a well-considered step-by-step process of what she could do as a brand, etc. And all. So could you like tell us what prompted that specific response in a way? Because Mampi wasn't trending at that time, but then you just came out with that post in a way. So like, please just guide us through that process.
Okay. So I've been, how do I say this? I've been creating content for a while for artists, but then one thing I noticed was, for example, I have packages of management. There's like the higher tier, middle tier, lower tier, and no one has actually gone for the lower tier one, despite it being like the cheaper option. So I noticed one realization to say, people are not serious. We will never go for the option because that is meant for people who are sort of not serious. So they're actually not even serious enough to go for that option. So only the like top one, because people who think of that are actually serious. So I was like, I'm actually not making as much impact trying to solve small problems. Let me sort of elevate my focus to actually bigger problems in the industry, because those are experienced by people actually taking this thing seriously. So I was trying to rebrand. I don't know if you've been following my socials. So I'm actually even switching from orange to blue, and even my content is sort of transitioning. And that was like one of the things I'm supposed to be doing a lot more often. So the trigger as to why Mampi was the focus of that post is because I'm actually a fan.
Yeah.
And I was making a playlist. So there's a song she did called featuring Frank Rowe. The song is called Featuring, then it features Frank Rowe. So it disappeared off the playlist. So it really bothered me because the flow got messed up. So I was like, what happened to this song? So I go on her profile and then actually noticed to say there's such a lot of disorganization going on the profile. So I eventually tried to reach out to people that had her contacts. I couldn't find one at the time, then eventually got it from Sangatembo. But then the problem was I was in a space where she had a birthday around the same time. So I was like, if I call her now, this is like a weird time to call someone about this. So I was like, maybe let me wait and then see if I could call or text her later. So I eventually forgot because life came in the way. Until when I was thinking of the rebrand, I was like, oh, wait, I never actually did that Mampi thing. It was actually originally supposed to be a video. So because of, life and not being able to shoot, I was like, let me just make a post about this. And that's how that happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Like it got quite a lot of buzz. Like people were speaking like positively on that. And then other people, obviously, Facebook, there was a little bit of like banter in the comments. But I think the main thing that we were able to see was that it came from a point of like wisdom in a way. And it wasn't anything spiteful, which I think is like a very thin line for like people to cross, So you quite frankly did that pretty well. And now you mentioned something just recently, I mean, just now on like the packages of the artists in a way. So in a structured way, could you please like guide us through on like how you create your packages for the artists that you're trying to serve, and like from, let's say you said the premium, like, and then there's the mid, and then there's like the entry level package in a way, and like what type of artist is attracted to each of those layers of the packages in a way.
So I have a service called Managers for Hire. So originally it was meant to be like a whole list of managers. We had some issues, but we've never actually launched it. So I'm the first manager that's run under that particular program. So how it works is it's a subscription service where you subscribe to be my client. I manage you for a length of time. I think minimum is like 12 months, then there's monthly subscriptions that you pay. So the top tier one is like a full-on management where you oversee the brand and everything. You can use your networks, whatever resources I have access to. Like if I'm a designer, I can put in all my resources and skills into that. The second one is more of overseeing. So you can sort of guide them, come up with plans together, but they have the responsibility of executing those said plans. The lowest one is more of a consultational thing. So when they have need for advice, professional opinions on a decision they're trying to make or a repositioning of their brand and stuff like that, they ask you questions, you respond. It's like an ongoing consultation. So those are the three packages. So normally, I've never actually gotten one for the lowest one. Mainly, it's the mid one. The top one gets the most. I've always seen more people getting the top one.
Because I think it adds more value to it, when you see it like that. Because on the artwork creation process as well, I think your skill as a graphic designer has obviously come through in that aspect, because there's a lot of like no shots fired, but there's a lot of mediocre like artwork that's just put out there, and like as a designer myself, I always see it like this just took 10 minutes to do. This was just like a Photoshop filter here. You just got the whatever font you found in the library and you just took a picture and then you put it out there. But there's one project, was it artwork that you did specifically that, and I think I wasn't in the country at the time, so like you were my lens into like what's going on here. I think it was for this girl. Is it? I don't want to say her name wrong because like it will still look like I don't really pay attention. Is it Keisha? Keisha. Yes, okay. yes. Yeah. It had that whole flower, not flower, like feather thing. I don't know. There was a bird involved somewhere there. That was like 2018 somewhere there. Anyway. But that artwork to me, like, it was so unique to me because, like, I wasn't in the country, so I didn't even know her. But, like, when I saw that artwork, I was like, oh, who is she? what is she doing? And it was like, it had like this dark, almost like look to it. And I was like, oh, is she a goth girl?
Oh, okay. I think I know the.
You remember it now, yeah?
That should be the Kwesi's daughter EP.
Yes, that one. Like, that was so interesting to do. I mean, like to observe in that perspective. And yeah, bro, that was really cool. So now, there's a saying that you can take what? You can take a horse to the river, but you can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
So in that context, like you offer a lot of advice and all, but is it received well by the people you intend it for? And what sort of like emotional journey do you go through during that whole feedback session when you're giving people advice?
Okay. So when I started making content, I was making it for me. I didn't need any feedback or approval. I was doing it because I was an artist once. So the mindset was, when I needed this, what would I have wanted to know? So I was pretty much writing it like for the younger, when I was still an artist, like what would I have needed to know? And if anyone is in those same shoes, this is what they need to know.
Yeah.
And I was doing it for free for a while, but I think I noticed to say, the reception in the use of the information was, I think, slightly, how do I put it? It's like you're offering something for free, but when you charge, that's when they actually take what you're saying seriously. But it's the same thing that you offer for free. But when you charge, you're like... So I actually started adding a bit more of a cost to the access of the information. And then one thing I noticed was there were two types of people. Yeah. There were those people that couldn't access me fully, and it would be a situation where I meet them on the streets. They're like, yo, your thing changed my life, like the thing. And you don't even remember what he's talking about. Yeah. And then, like I said, there are those people that actually pay to access the information. And I see how it actually applies to their careers and see the change. Yeah.
So now, like, is there, like, let's say, like an artist who's like in the mainstream, who like you've given a piece of advice and you've seen it being implemented in a way that, let's say, maybe you've never even thought that they would do it that way? Like, could you tell us like an artist who like you've done like something like that for? You don't need to drop the name, but like, just like, did they...
That implemented it in a way that I didn't see it, or that just implemented it?
That just implemented it, rather.
I think, well, I mean, there's probably no problem in saying that. I think the name, I think that obviously comes first is Esther Chungu. Yeah, I think Esther is one of the most, I wouldn't say humble, but she's...
No, she is.
That is a quality she possesses, but in this aspect of complying to actually executing out, maybe called wisdom. I think she's wise enough to know, to learn and pick up when, so she did apply something we had worked on, and it actually bared quite significant fruit.
So now, like, speaking of like local artists while we're still here, are there any artists that are doing things right now that you admire, like from the perspective of like, let's say, their branding, their music, their professionalism, and any other things in between?
Okay, so Tilo, 76 Drums, Mumbayachi, where are the other names? But I think these guys immediately stand out for me because just how there's a significant difference between an everyday person and when you see an artist. And for me, these guys, when I see them, I see the artist. They don't look like everyday people. The way they carry their sound, they don't necessarily sound like they're trying to fit into a trend, but they do know how to adapt to the times also. So those guys like really...
What do you think of the 76 Drums like music video in a way?
I think because you know that guy is technically is an upcoming artist. So the amount of detail and excellence he puts to like even just his styling, I think it's exceptional. Like you would expect people to be like on level whatever to start doing things like that, but he's from the jump putting in that kind of input.
Was he on your radar before that video dropped? Because like to me it caught me like off guard. Like my good friend Mapalo, like I was sitting next to him at like work, and then he was like, yo bro, have you seen this video? You know, and he was looking at it from like the VFX perspective, where I was like, how did they do this in Z? You know, so like what really stood out to you about that whole thing? And was he on your radar?
He was on my radar. I think I'd come across him 3 songs before that.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a song called, I think, Unleashed, where he features a girl called Kondwani. Yeah, so I liked how his styling was done. No, actually, I knew about him from a cipher with Muzengaman, where he was going against Musepera Crown. But it's only when he did his solo work that I actually noticed, like, he actually was an exceptional artist. Like, okay, this guy is different.
Yeah.
The sound was different. The way he was attacking the beat was different. Then the styling was different. So I actually did a post where I was addressing stylists, and he was one of the examples I gave of how stylists should, like, change the perception that an artist portrays to the public, and so on and so forth. So when I saw his second video, which was similar style of like CGI and stuff like that, but I think this new one is now the one that like really like the CGI was like well put together. Yeah.
Okay.
But all the videos are exceptional. That's one thing I'll say. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's cool. Yo. So, for instance, like in this case, like you operate at the intersection of creativity and commerce. And you've got you give a lot of good intel nuggets about how to make money in the music business in Zambia. Which areas are the most lucrative for Zambian artists? And is it feasible? And is it feasible over time? And what sort of legitimacy can they add to as they're making their money in a way? Could you like just...
So the money is in, I think the three major ones are streaming, collaborations with like brands, which could be influencer work or an actual endorsement. And then there's what you call a brand ambassador, where you're the specific individual who's the face of that particular brand. There's events, and I'll add in a fourth one, which is merch, but it's not a big thing in Zambia right now.
Yeah.
But so streaming, the way streaming works is the bigger your catalog, the more money you make. So you can't expect to make so much from one song, but the more songs you have. So I'll put it in this way: 1 times 1 million is 1 million, but 1 million times 1 is also 1 million. So what I'm trying to say by that is one song would have to be streamed 1 million times to make 1 million. But 1 million songs would just need to be streamed once to get the same results. So the bigger your catalog, the more albums, the more you're able to make revenue from your music. Because I see people drop 3 singles, they look at the figures, they're like, this stuff is not working. No, you need to have like a proper catalog of songs and albums. And then for the endorsement, brand deals and influencer work and that kind of stuff, I think that one is more on management and branding. If you don't have a proper manager and proper branding, you won't really see the results of that. But if you position yourself well enough, I think even someone like 76 Drums, the way he's carrying himself, I think easily, if he has proper management now, that's something that they could easily do. There are people that make great music, but their branding isn't so well put together. I think for corporates to get like interested in those people, it takes like a really good manager to make that work. But events, commonly I think a lot of people go to festivals. But I think we need to move into, for the sustainability aspect of your question, we need to move in where artists have their own shows. Like, Chef does something in June, Chef is doing something in December. But I think it's always him going to someone else's event and festivals and stuff like that. So those are like the main money-making activities.
So now, like, it's on the merch bit, I think that's the interesting thing. Why don't you think it's as big as it is elsewhere in the world compared to Zambia?
Because the biggest problems in Zambia are actually at the top.
Explain.
Like if you
go deeper, Papa. Yeah.
Like if you look at the Spotify profiles, the YouTube profiles, you find the younger artists have exceptionally organized themselves. If you look at the bigger artists, you find that the disorder, the disorganization is like way more prominent up there. Younger artists, I think, know better. I don't know if it's because of information from the internet and stuff like that, but I think the problems are usually on the bigger artists. Like if you look at things like Boomplay, Spotify, bigger artists should be saying stream everywhere. It shouldn't even be like, let's push Boomplay because people can access it for free and Zambians. No, it's your responsibility to educate your audience to actually use the right platforms. It shouldn't be you adjusting to conform to the most or easiest path. So if you look at merch, it's people like Yomap, Slap D, Mike that have the biggest chance of actually making it work. But they're the ones that are actually not doing it. I've seen Natasha Chansa do that. I've seen A number of younger artists do it, but
actually,
their audience.
my sorry to cut you short. My experience of like an artist merch who like I really wanted was Mampi. Like when he transitioned into like being like on the gospel side of music, like there were these shirts that he did, the Mizu shirts, and then right now the pole pole like jackets with like the African print. I was like, I need that right now, but I think it's just like the next question after I need it is where can I get it?
Yeah, they're not mass produced.
That's the thing. And quite recently, I think, just shout out to Tim, friend of the channel. I met up with him like just like around Lusaka, and he was wearing it was just a white T-shirt with the name of the album, Sunday. Yeah. And it looked so nice. It looked like something that belongs in like Zara or like H&M and all. And I was like, bro, I want that T-shirt. And he told me like, anyway, they're sorting out the whole merch thing. Like he said in like the next 2-3 weeks or so. So like that's actually one of the few opportunities that I actually want to like dive into like with an artist merch in a way.
Yeah, because merch, if you really think about it, back when we still had CDs, the price of a CD, if you factor in the production costs, I think you might even make more revenue and profit from a T-shirt than from CD.
True, 100%. So now, like you mentioned Boomplay, which of course is like a hot topic, and like some people sing high praises about the platform, and some industry shareholders have been branded as like a part of the system. Yeah. So you've made your position known around your concerns. Concerning like Boomplay. So where in the Zambian landscape do you think the conversation will go regarding Boomplay? Because for me, I'm a bit of a snob. So like when I hear like you play your music on Boomplay, I look at you with a side eye. I'm like, bruh, do you guys have play-by-play lyrics? Like, does it have like that concert feature where it says like where your artist is playing concert?
Do you see album artwork?
You see, like things like that. Yeah. So like, where do you think the conversation around Boomplay is gonna go, like in the Zambian context?
I think Boomplay is like a necessary evil. I think it helped us express important points that would not have come up if people didn't gravitate towards it. So it was a learning moment for a lot of artists. And it's like there's a proverb in the Bible that says, a simple man will wait to encounter the problem, but a wise man will see it from afar and move away. So I think this is one of those scenarios where if you don't see the problem, you will eventually come across it, and then you see like, oh, so this is what they were talking about. And I feel like a lot of people right now, the artists, they've actually seen some of the problems, and a lot of them are now diverting to doing like every streaming platform, releasing on every streaming platform, as compared to before, because there was this excitement from nowhere where Boomplay, exclusive. Some didn't even understand that people doing exclusives were getting revenue or some kind of incentive. They thought just doing an exclusive had a benefit in of itself, which was like the ignorance aspect of things. So like I think now, especially with this major problem with Boomplay, where they delay even for like a year before you get your royalties. Whereas these other platforms, every month from the first 3 months, you get royalties coming in. So I think people are now realizing to say, oh, so there are some issues. So it's not as glorified as we thought it was. Yeah, so I see the conversation going to a point where it will still be a major contributor in Zambia, but I think more people will start diverting to these other platforms like Spotify and Apple Music.
Okay. And for instance, like another shameless channel plug. So the Z Flashback, we've had guests like, for instance, we've had El Mukuka, we've had Sebastian Dutch, we've had the Creative Natives, the duo, and they've discussed the evolution of the house music as a genre in Zambia in a way, and the journey that they've had, and also taking like the Zambian like house music to the world. Like Sebastian, who like I'm sure you've heard, he's traveled, he's done all of these things. So what are your views on house music in Zambia, and how do you think it can like almost change its trajectory to go international in that aspect, since international is like a trending word? Like, what are your views on like Zambian house music going out there?
I think house is like the easiest.
Yeah.
It's actually the easiest one to go international because of the nature of like how it flows. It works through festivals. So even the money generation is actually easier or faster using those genres. I feel like it's still a niche in Zambia. And unfortunately, I don't see the Zambian mainstream accommodating it to the level where these other genres are, unless these guys begin to integrate the mainstream acts, like say Shefi with Eo Mukuka, maybe Makitu on a Sebastian Dash.
Yes.
Those collaborations where there's a middle ground, not like all the way or all the way this side, but like a middle ground for both their genres to coexist. I think that's where maybe if you look at Mumbayachi, right? Mumbayachi has a different genre and sound from everyone else.
Yes.
But when he collaborated with Slap D, that was like the song that introduced Mumbayachi fans to Slap D and Slap D fans to Mumbayachi.
Like a crossover, basically.
Yeah, so that kind of approach, I think, for EDM and house music is what needs to happen for it to get a bigger audience in Zambia. But to be honest, I don't think they need an audience in Zambia. The global stage is way bigger for that sound.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. And just to like on a different genre, like or on a different genre in a way, like we've also had people like Chandambao, who I think has appeared in 2 episodes, I believe. And we had Young Verbal and Critic as well. And for instance, on their episode, one of the main key points that they said was that there's a lot of like struggle on like English, like rapping in English in the Zambian like music space. And for instance, like, what do you think, what are your thoughts around that whole, like, I'm an English rapper in Zambia and this is like my flow and all, as compared to like, let's say the guys who like rap in like the local lingo in that way?
Okay, so my take on that is potentially controversial because a lot of artists without the E, artists with the E would understand. So the thing about music is that it's a business. So if you're doing business, you need to understand your customer. And the customer is always right in mostly every business, except in music where some people feel a type of way about it. But generally, the way this thing works is if you know your audience prefers something, that should be the thing that you offer them. So like for example, inenga nambo kuranda mchibemba ninchibada ama Zambians bala mfofonde landa. Because they won't niche that target in this particular case. But if I'm using English, it means I'm trying to reach a different audience. So if you're looking at becoming bigger in Zambia and you've noticed that Bemba and Nyanja are the things that resonate with the people, I think the wisest thing you could do is find the middle ground or switch all the way. Shefi, some people don't understand this. Shefi can rap in English, but he had to drop that. Zone Farm was rapping exclusively in English until they started combining Nyanja and Bemba. And then they had more success.
Yes, I
so
remember,
it's just about understanding the business aspect of it and knowing the customer is a major aspect of what you're doing. You shouldn't do it in isolation to say, let me do my thing, then throw it out there and see what happens. If you listen to Tim's album, it's not completely English. He throws in those things because he knows the audience will resonate with those things. And that's just how this thing works.
On the note of numbers, quite recently, Spotify released the Wrapped. The Spotify Wrapped, I think for me, my most like streamed artist was like Post Malone. Like his album like really like just hit home for me. And we saw like on like Facebook, for instance, a lot of artists were sharing their numbers. And one artist or a few artists, well, we were surprised like, oh, this is the number of numbers you're able to reach in a way. So like, what was your thought process when you were seeing the Spotify Wrapped numbers that were coming out from our local artists?
For me, I think the major aspect was how much we've improved. Because Spotify before, when was that? I don't remember exactly, but there was a point where even 100 streams on Spotify was an achievement because there were so little Zambians, few Zambians using the platform. And I think we've gotten to a point where even Your Maps, I think, is getting like 100K just on Spotify. And I can only hope that we grow more because that's like the global platform that can actually be used as a reference when we're trying to like engage with other people from other countries to say this is how good my numbers are. Because you can't use certain platforms because they are specific to certain regions and conversations don't seem to make sense. But I think we have really improved. If you look at Killa was like in the millions. I think people like Pompey, I think also was in the millions.
Yes.
So the numbers have like really gone up. It's a very big improvement.
So now, do you think that musicians who aren't curious about things like branding, tech, new media run the risk of being left behind, or can they still continue enjoying success if they have a team handling that aspect?
I think any musician with an audience has a chance, but I think there are certain opportunities that you miss out on if you enter late. Like, for example, TikTok, I think there was a point where if you joined early enough, you'd enjoy the success of the millions of views. But now it's harder to get in.
Yeah.
So there are certain opportunities like those where it's time sensitive. But I think even like Danny, for example, Danny Kaya has an audience from a different generation to what's trending now. But he's still getting like good numbers from the old music on. Like if you check his Spotify Wrapped, the numbers were in the hundreds of thousands. And that's Spotify.
Yes.
So as long as you have an audience, you could improve in a way that it still starts to benefit you, but there will be certain opportunities that if you don't enter early enough, you miss out on those opportunities.
And it's interesting. You spoke about Danny Kai. Last night, I was at like a work function where he was the artist. He was like one of the main artists, and like it was interesting to see that. I think my generation, like we were like people like 30 or lower. Yeah. We were vibing to the music, we were like, oh yeah, I remember this song. My mom used to, my dad used to. Yeah. But like the OGs, they were losing their minds over Kaya, over like Johnny and so on and so. Yeah. And at that moment, I was like, what sort of impact would that generation have had if they had like a Spotify, or if there was a more streamlined form of like earning an income from that in a way? So like I could only imagine like what they could have done for like that if these platforms existed then in a way. And
I mean, they exist now. So I think the smartest thing was the transition. If they were adapting with the times, I think there was a time where they took a backseat. Yes. A lot of them felt like, we've done this music thing long enough. Let's just chill. But I think that was like the bad or unwise move, because they should have kept on going and transitioning with the times. Yeah. So even when Spotify and Apple Music eventually came to Zambia, they should have been like, oh yeah, my music is also on these platforms. But I think a lot of them were slow to adapt. Yeah. And the crazy thing about it, which you've highlighted with your point, is the generation that your audience is found in. Once those people, let me use the word, die off, your chances of gaining a new audience die off also. Yes. So whilst you still have that audience, that's the best time to now transition to the newer generation before your original fans disappear.
So now how can Zambian music or Zambian musicians get to a place of success, and how would you define these things that we can quantify as markers of success?
The word success, I think, differs. Yeah. I think for me, like everyone has their own definition. Like some people want a Grammy, whether they make financial success as part of the journey, that's like a byproduct. They just want a Grammy. Others just want to live, survive, make a living off their music. Whether they get a Grammy or not, that doesn't matter. So I think everyone has a different level of success, but I think sustainability for me should be a common ground. What you do should sustain itself and shouldn't require something else. Like a lot of artists that are thriving today, I think a good number now can sustain their careers with the music. But I think there was a point where you needed like a day job alongside the music, because otherwise it wasn't going to work out. But I think we've at least gotten to a point where it can sustain itself. Like I don't think Chef 187 is doing anything else. I don't think Maki 2 even needs to do anything else. Even though they can, they don't need to. It's an optional thing now. So I think success for a Zambian would be where the music is sustaining itself. And like I said, those three main markers: streaming, events, brand deals, and like the fourth one of merch and stuff like that. Having those as an integral part of what you do to the point where they now start sustaining you, I think that is what success for me is.
Yeah. Is there a thing as too much success? Because quite recently, one of our top boys was called into question by the Anti-Corruption Commission. And when I first heard that news, I was like, he does shows on like a regular basis. He's been traveling. He's like even I did just like basic math. I was like, if he gets this much from a show, which I think is like the range that caliber of his artist does, that times 6, it's fairly reasonable that he could afford that lifestyle or like that vehicle.
Yeah.
And I found it rather like almost like insulting in a way. And when I was going through the comments, one of the comments was like, I think these ACC people think that artists now have a lifestyle of what the older artists did, where like they're struggling and all of that. So like I'm very interested to ask you, like, what do you think about that whole thing where it's almost like he's being prosecuted for being too successful in a way.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think to some, I've gotten like more context over the matter. So there's certain sentiments there's certain sentiments I had before that I don't have anymore. But I did feel that way. Like, just because someone, it's almost like these guys work on a premise to say, if it looks a certain way, then there has to be something going on. So there's a lot of people that are worthy of the investigation that are not being investigated because they don't look like they are worthy of being investigated. But because he looks like this car, how come? They're now investigating the guy, but they clarify it to say blah, 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 blah. But the point is, I think success shouldn't be like the basis for being investigated. It discourages people from wanting to be transparent. And I think that's one of the things, if you notice in Africa, on the Forbes lists and all this, we don't show up because
no one,
people feel insecure to know, or for people to know that they have a certain amount of money because, okay, some people, it's maybe family. They think the family will now know that they have money. Like if you've seen people that win the lotto.
Yes, they
a lot
always
of them
in
hide.
masks. Yes, they hide
because,
their identity.
So I think that's the problem. That's the problem in Africa, which we kind of have to evolve past because it limits the kids from knowing the possibilities of what these things can do for them. Because if they don't think it can make you live that kind of life, certain people won't pursue it. They would rather go be a doctor or something because they think that's what that kind of life should come from. Yeah.
And like, okay, well, we're almost at the end. And this is like on a personal note. I've known you to be... Firstly, let me just scratch that. We've known each other for almost, I think, 10 years now. And when we interacted, I knew you as a graphic designer. And I still think you're a beast of a designer. I mean, like, if you look at the branding that you do, that you put up, just even like for yourself, like if I was an artist, I'll be like, I want to work with him. Like if his logo looks like that, if his daily post looks like that, then obviously he knows. So like, could you like tell us about how you built that life? And then now the life that you are living now is almost feels like a transition between two worlds. So like, how do you balance both being like a daily active creative in like the design space, and then almost like being a father of an industry here where you're giving advice and all, and advice can only take you so far. So like, please just like drop some nuggets for us, boss.
So there's living in purpose, and then there's making a living. Music saved my life, like literally and metaphorically, and whichever way you think of it. That's just my background. So for me, music is like the North Star. I'm always, if there are two options, one involves music, one involves something else, I always, by default, I'll pick the one that involves music, because music for me is like that thing that is part of my purpose. So when design came in, it actually came through the music that I was doing. I was trying to make artwork for what we were producing and releasing, and eventually got into an industry that I didn't even know existed. And this is something I've never, I think, spoken about on camera. So I went to UNZA to study computer science. That's why I got like a lot of the tech stuff that I know and so on and so forth. But I didn't actually finish because the passion that I was following that led me there when we were learning, I couldn't see how the things could be applied in a practical sense. It was more theoretical and it felt like a waste of money. So I was like, let me drop out and leave this behind. So when I left, the next source of income, because I knew I couldn't go back to my parents and say I left uni for what. So there was an interview that was coming up with a certain agency. And that's how I got into design. So design for me was like making a living, but music has always been my calling and purpose. So even when I do things like associated with music, it's not like a job. It just feels natural and part of what I should be doing. Design is the means, I would say. And if something else comes up, it might become another thing, but music will always be that thing that always stays. So even transitioning, I wouldn't even say transitioning. I've always been in the music space. It's just that what I express or show publicly maybe is what may have transitioned. So music is always a space that I'm strongly passionate about. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does, man. It does, man. It's. I'm so proud to see you come all this way. I mean, we shared a desk at work. We got shouted at together. We gave late nights together. So having this opportunity to just chat with you now like brings me so much joy and hope. And I really wish you the best in everything that you do.
Thank you, man. It's been an honor to be featured. Shout out to Chilu. I mean, even Chilu knowing my name, I think is an achievement.
You made it, bro. You made it, bro.